when I returned to the bedside, the President had a high fever and his oxygen saturation was transiently dipping below 94%. Given these two developments, I was concerned for possible rapid progression of the illness. I recommended the President we try some supplemental oxygen.
The White House physician acknowledging today a question that he refused to answer directly yesterday, that the President did, in fact, receive supplemental oxygen on Friday. Today's press conference by the President's doctors is raising some other questions, and we're back with our panel. Joining us, Susan Glasser. Susan, the doctors tried to clear up some contradictory information they offered yesterday, but there was still just a smog of obfuscation. What was your reaction?
Well, you know, Jake, having spent a few years in Russia, it reminded me of, sort of Kremlinology that we're all plunged into. What did we make of this omission? What do we make of the fact that they're admitting now that his condition was much worse on Friday, but they didn't tell us that on Friday? It's a sort of an official disinformation campaign, unfortunately, around the president's health, which I find very worrisome because we're at the early days of the president's illness. And, they already don't have a credible messenger on basic questions of the president's medical situation. And given that this is going to go on for some time, that's a huge problem. There's literally no one who can speak with authority and credibility already in this situation. As you pointed out, when did this illness even start? In order to try to evaluate the medical situation, they haven't provided us with basic information days into a national and international crisis.
I forgot that your husband, Peter Baker, who wrote for the New York Times, also were in Russia. I forgot that relevant aspect. I was thinking also about your expertise, because you two have a new book about James Baker, who was chief of staff for Ronald Reagan. And in fact, there were questions during Baker's time as chief of staff in the White House about how much information and what he did to disclose everything when Ronald Reagan was shot, which is obviously a very different, but also health crisis for a president of the United States.
Well, that's right. The first instinct of, political advisors to a president is to try to minimize the situation. They were very worried that Reagan's assassination would bring up questions about his age and his fitness to govern. Baker described for us ducking into a broom closet at George Washington University Hospital and making a decision on the fly with two other advisors to President Reagan that they would not invoke the 25th Amendment, even though he was going to be under sedation for an operation. That decision has been criticized, and he told us he acknowledged that possibly correctly criticized by history. There's a long history of political advisors to a president shading the truth. I think what's worrisome here is we now see the medical doctors at Walter Reed, who seem to be playing along with essentially a highly politicized version of talking points to the American public about the president's health. These are the doctors. These are not the White House officials. So that's very worrisome, Jake.
Yeah, the book is called The Man Who Ran Washington by Susan Glasser and Peter Baker. Susan, stay with us. I want to bring in the rest of our panel. Sanjay, are you still there? Okay, you're there. Sanjay, let me ask you. The White House, we're still, I guess we're the third day into this now. President Trump went there on Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
We don't even know.
Yeah, well, exactly. And we don't even know when they learned he contracted the virus. We don't even know that. You noted that he might have had it on Tuesday when he was in Ohio for the presidential debate. I interviewed Ohio Governor Mike DeWine today on State of the Union, and he said that the White House did not contact him to let him know that President Trump, Hope Hicks, First Lady Melania Trump had tested positive, even though they had been in his state just a few days before, and that no one had reached out to him to begin the process of contact tracing to make sure that any Ohioans that theoretically could have been infected, and we know the disdain that the president and his team have for wearing masks and basic guidelines that they expect the rest of us schmucks to uphold, the idea that nobody had reached out to him to contact trace. Are you surprised by that?
No, I'm not surprised by it, because I think that there was this, I think there was this A, lack of seriousness about this, which is really, really concerning. But B, Jake, as we're hearing more and more of these details now about what happened over the past several days, including, giving the president this experimental therapy in the White House, and not disclosing that right away, not telling us ahead of time that this was going to happen, it's increasingly sounding like they were trying to hide things. I mean, I hate to say it because I know that's a serious thing to say, but that is becoming increasingly clear. I think they were hoping that that they wouldn't necessarily have to disclose this. Obviously, if you go back to Ohio and you say there's been this positive test, you need to start contact tracing, that was going to, alert everybody as to who had been tested as positive. So you had a situation where he clearly was starting to become symptomatic. We know in the few days before you're symptomatic, you're likely the most contagious. We still don't know exactly when his last negative test was. All these things, I think, are because there was this desire to say, hey, maybe we could scoop by without needing to do anything here. Give a little monoclonal antibody. Maybe he'll improve, not really become symptomatic, and, we'll go with that. And then he got sick. And then his oxygenation dropped. He developed a fever, and I'm sure Sean Conley got understandably worried. He said, well, this is going absolutely in the wrong direction. We're dealing with a 74-year-old man with, pre-existing conditions and risk factors, and he just spiked a fever, dropped his oxygenation. There's something going on in his lungs. He's mounting a significant immune response. We got to get him to the hospital. And he's essentially medevaced at that point. And now these details still coming out slowly, but coming out. So does it surprise me? No. Is it shocking and reckless? Yes.
It's shocking and reckless that this is now out. We all know, and the idea that the White House isn't now working with Governor DeWine of Ohio or Governor Murphy of New Jersey to figure out and contact trace so that anybody that may have been infected by the president and his team in Ohio and New Jersey can isolate themselves, can get the medical care they need. It's just remarkably reckless. And Gloria, I have to say, Sanjay talks about how this appears to be an effort, at the very least, to hide something. The story first came out because Jennifer Jacobs of Bloomberg News reported that Hope Hicks had tested positive for the virus. I believe that was on Thursday. I'm not sure when she tested positive, whether it was Wednesday or Thursday. But do you think it's possible that if Jennifer Jacobs hadn't broken that news, we might not know about any of this?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I mean, and obviously they were trying to hide things and hoping that, of course, the President of the United States and the First Lady would not contract the virus. I believe that if it had just sort of stayed with Hope, that they wouldn't have said anything to anyone. There are people inside the White House who are saying they aren't even getting any emails about procedure and contact tracing from this White House. And you know them, Jake. I think, yes, they would have tried to hide it. And even when the president did contract the virus now, as we all know, they tried to underplay it. They tried to kind of say, he's fine, he's doing well, he's great. And then you have a doctor standing out there today, and this is something that I'm really confused about, actually. The doctor standing out there today saying that the reason he gave misinformation, the reason he lied yesterday, was he said that he didn't want to steer the course of illness in another direction. That was the reason he gave for not telling the truth. How can the truth steer the course of illness in another direction? Maybe he's thinking the president would watch TV and would take a turn for the worse if he knew how really bad it was. I don't have any idea what that means. And it's kind of, all of this paints a portrait of a White House that, A, is either incompetent or out of control or trying to cover up or, whatever you want to say. But even the doctor now is saying that, he wanted to give an upbeat attitude and he didn't want to steer the course of the illness, which I don't really understand. Is there a medical reason for that? I can't imagine.
Yeah, I didn't go to medical school, but conveying an upbeat attitude is not a class at Harvard Med, I'm quite sure. Dana, there is still time for the Trump White House to come out and give all the information and be factual and honest about everything. But I think it's unmistakable that in terms of communications and being forthright, this has been botched from the very beginning.
Very botched. And the reason is pretty obvious, Jake. It's because it gets to the question you just asked Gloria. Whether or not, if the president had not actually gotten sick to the point where he clearly couldn't go to the rally he was supposed to go to or do the basic functions in public of the presidency, whether we would have ever known about this. The fact that they tweeted it at 1 a.m. Suggests, and this is actually just a question that we need answered, that maybe that was the point they realized, he can't do his day tomorrow. We gotta get this out there. And so if you go back in time, Tuesday at the debate, Chris Wallace, the moderator, revealed a couple days ago that it was the honor system getting tests and that he got there late, the president. And we don't know whether or not he took a test. Did he? Did he not? I mean, the key question that Sanjay keeps hitting on over and over again is, when was the president's last negative test? The flip side of that question is, when was the president's first positive test? And that is really, really something that we don't know. And hopefully we will eventually know.
We still don't know. The president's been in the hospital for 3 days.
Exactly. And that's about public consumption and public information. But it's also about what Mike DeWine told you this morning, the governor of Ohio. It's about contact tracing. Yeah. All of these people from New Jersey to Minnesota to all the people at the White House have not been, I mean, even his nearest and dearest, people who helped him in his debate, from Rudy Giuliani to Chris Christie, Jake, they weren't even called to
Chris Christie now in a hospital in New Jersey. Chris Christie now in a hospital in New Jersey. And my hearts go out to the bartenders and housekeepers at Bedminster. This notion of an honor system.
Exactly.
That is a vestige of a bygone era. There's no way an honor system works in the system we have right now. Thanks so much to all of you. The president's diagnosis set off a scramble among people in several states worried that they might have been exposed to the virus by President Trump and his team. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine and senior advisor to nominee Joe Biden, Simone Sanders, will join me next. Stay with us.